So we'll call to order the regularly scheduled meeting of the Zoning Commission of the Town of Simsbury for Monday, April 21st. And we'll appoint Vaughn for Jerry Post. All right. That sounds good.
Good.
Reviewing the minutes of April 7th.
Do we have to put the changes in the changes? I mean,
Yeah.
can't we just implement them?
Yes. Any changes to the minutes from the previous minutes?
Yeah, I mean, we don't have to note in the minutes that what we changed in the previous minutes, just fix them.
Yeah, just, unless they're substantive, I would say I agree with that. Just fix the minutes, and we don't have to have in the minutes for this week that we discuss the
Change.
minutes from.
Right.
All right, so we'll adopt the minutes of the April 7th meeting. Great. All right, so the first item of business, new business, is a public hearing. You want to read the call?
I will. The Town of Simsbury will hold a public hearing at a regular meeting to be held on Monday, April 21st, 2014 at 7 p.m. in the main meeting room at the Simsbury Town Offices, 933 Hot Meadow Street, Simsbury, Connecticut, on the following. Application number 14-17 of Richard E. Schoenhart, agent, Lynn Schoenhart, owner, for a special exception pursuant to Article 7, Section C9 of the Simsbury zoning regulations for an accessory dwelling unit on the property located at 7 Pasture Lane, West Simsbury, map B09, block 419, lot 003, zone R40. At this hearing, interested persons may appear and be heard, and written communications will be received.
Thank you. Applicant?
Yeah.
We ask that you use the podium and the microphone because we are being recorded.
Let me begin, though, by giving you this affidavit that's
Okay?
a requirement.
Thank you.
We have properly posted signs on our property.
All right, great.
So, do you have plans in front of you of the floor plan and
We have been provided with all of those, yes.
Pardon? Richard Schoenhart. Yeah, thank you. Let me begin by explaining what we're proposing to do with our house in West Simsbury. We find that we have a second floor that we're not using, and it seemed like a good timing for us to consider making this kind of change as we plan for our future. We love the neighborhood. We love our home. We intend to stay there the rest of our lives, and so I've been thinking out how we're going to accomplish that. And one of the provisions that found in your zoning regulations, our zoning regulations, is this provision that allows for an accessory dwelling unit to be created under very strict and restrictive conditions. And we see that as an advantage for us as we live out our lives there. And I'll mention a little bit more about that in a moment. But first, to describe what we're doing with our house. So on the second floor, we're making only one change there, and that is to take one of the small bedrooms and install a small kitchen there. Other than that, the second floor remains the same as it is. We take the central stair in the house and divide it so that there's a separate entrance from this second floor directly to the outside. You go down half a landing, and at the mid-landing between the first and second floor level, we break through the window area that we have on that side of the house and create a new doorway and a 4-foot by 6-foot deck, and then 8 stairs down to grade. That's the extent of the construction. And while we anticipate that we would have others living there, what we're doing does not prevent the house from being used continually or in the future as a single-family dwelling. These structural changes are minor. We're not adding any square footage to the house at all. The house remains the same. We'll be living on the first floor where we have a master bedroom, bath, and other facilities on that. So again, I say that we we're looking at our future and saying, how can we continue to live out our lives here? We are currently, at our age, we are living on our savings, and we find that it's going to continue to be a stretch, and we see the opportunity to have a little rental income from this unit to help pay for taxes and to maintain the property. At my age, I'm no longer able to do some of the things I used to do to maintain everything, and so need to hire people to do that. I mentioned that the only changes to the exterior house that you would see is this doorway and the landing and the stairs going down. We have paved areas for parking an additional car for an occupant of that, so there's no change to driveway or pavement area. And your zoning regulations were designed, I don't know whether you were involved in drafting those, but they are designed to protect the neighborhood and by providing very restrictive conditions for allowing for an accessory apartment. The accessory apartment cannot be any more than 1,000 square feet. We are under that. It cannot be any more than 2/3 the floor area of the first floor. We're underneath that. And with all the 10 requirements that are listed in the regulations, we meet every one of those. And so we are complying with those, and we have in the file should be a letter from the Farmington Valley Health District indicating that our water supply and septic systems are adequate to take care of this. Actually, the total occupancy of our home will probably be less than it's been over the years. Our house is currently a 5-bedroom house. We're changing one of the bedrooms to a kitchen, and one of the other spaces on that second floor will become practically a sitting room. So it'll be that unit on the second floor essentially is a 2-bedroom unit. We would have already talked about our getting older, and we're really grateful for this regulation currently being in place that we see will allow us to stay in our home hopefully for the rest of our lives. One of us is probably going to die before the other. We see having this apartment there being helpful, either to have a caregiver perhaps live in, or someone else that can assist in maintaining the property. We've lived at our property for 51 years now, and we are the senior citizens on the street, with the exception perhaps of Carol Stokey, who lives across the street. But we've been there all these years. We love the neighborhood. We continue to be concerned about what's surrounding us. One of our sons, who was living with us for the last 4 years, bought the house on the corner of West Ledge and Pasture Lane, and he's in the process of restoring that and fixing that up. So our family is committed to this neighborhood. We understand that neighbors are concerned about changes in the neighborhood, and first of all, we point out that your regulations have considered that and made it very restrictive to do it. The requirements are that the owner of the house has to live in the house. If this was ever to be sold to another, that future buyer either commits to continue this accessory apartment use and continues to live in the house, or they certainly can revert back to it being a single family. This does not change the zone. The zone remains, as we understand it, clearly a single family zone. It's not becoming a multifamily neighborhood. Other matter of note is that over those 51 years that we've been living there, we've had other people living with us from time to time, sometimes family, sometimes not. Mentioned that our son and his family of 4 were living in that second floor for the last 4 years. So people are not going to see any change in terms of numbers of people in the neighborhood or really the character of the neighborhood. I think that's all I would like to say at this point. I'm happy to, of course, to answer questions, and I'd like to have the opportunity to respond to comments that others may make at the end of the comments section.
If that's appropriate, we'll be glad to do that. We appreciate your understanding of our zoning regulations and laws, and if you're ever interested in serving the town, we'd be glad to have you on the commission. So, but you're right. You've accurately described what we're doing here.
Any questions from?
Any questions from the commission first? Relative
Do
to
you
this?
reside in the home full year?
Oh, yeah, yes, we do. Yeah.
We'll continue with the public hearing. Are there those here to speak to this topic from neighborhood or otherwise? Please come and state your name and your address for the record. Thank you.
My name is Matthew Schoenhart, and I reside at 51 West Ledge Road, the house in the corner that my father referred to. I'm obviously the son of the applicant. As you're the town officials here tonight, I'm sure you're familiar with the situation when you meet someone from the town of Simsbury in a social setting, not a business setting. You'll inevitably get to chat with them, find out more about what they do, and they'll end up telling you, for instance, well, I've lived in town for 20 years now. And someone else, possibly within earshot, will turn to them and say, oh, so you're new to town. My parents have lived in the house at their current location, like I said, for over 40 years. And I'm not here to talk about the zoning issues, but there has been a question of value. And one of the questions before you tonight is if what they're doing to the town will lower the property value of other homes. I think that's particularly some of my neighbors are afraid of. But I think fears like that can sometimes cloud reason. And I think the sign that went up at the end of my parents' driveway regarding the application or the work that they're doing scared people. And I think that's because the process of the application suggested a more significant change than what the reality is of what they're actually doing. I think the concern is that Pasture Lane will now be switching over to possibly multi-family dwelling units. I don't think that's the case. I think my neighbors who are afraid of that don't have a good basis of knowledge or understanding or education in housing values to secure that rationale. I think the people that are immediately impacted by this change, who are opposing this, don't have anything factual to bring to you to substantiate those fears. I've been involved with residential real estate sales in the area for almost 15 years, have sold well over 100 homes. And in my opinion and experience, an in-law setup does not negatively impact the value of the house. I did speak with Bruce Caginello today. I don't think he's a resident of the town, but he was the president of the Board of Realtors of the Greater Hartford Board, and he couldn't be here tonight, but he concurs with that opinion. I think that's all I have to say for now. Thanks.
Thank you. Next.
Good evening. My name is Bill Rice, 6 Pasture Lane. And in the spirit of full disclosure, I'd like you to know that I am a member of the Planning Commission. But tonight I'm here as a resident addressing the application before you. It's true that Article 7 in the zoning regulations is entitled Permitted Uses and Accessory Dwelling Units fall under the section entitled Permitted as a Special Exception in any residential zone after a public hearing. I think it's important to note that the special exception may be permitted after the public hearing. And it's truly the Zoning Commission's decision to make that decision after hearing all the public testimony and evaluating the application for completeness and adherence to the requirements. the permitted use shall not be granted solely on the fact that a public hearing was held, but the content that was discussed in the public hearing. In making your decision, the commission shall be guided by, among other things, the existing and future character of the neighborhood in which the proposed use is to be located. Presently, there are 8 single-family homes on Pasture Lane, 10 if you count the 2 that face West Ledge Road. And it's a small neighborhood, and I don't think that the Plan of Conservation and Development, which actually spawned the accessory dwelling unit zoning regulation, ever foresaw having an area like Pasture Lane be allowed to have multifamily dwellings. And in my opinion, permitting this exception certainly would have a negative effect on the character of the neighborhood. It would be the only building to date that would have an accessory dwelling unit. I also have a concern on what would happen when the Schoenhardts no longer own the property. I know Mr. Schoenhardt tried to address that, and the zoning regulations are very clear that the new owner has an obligation to state their intent. I believe it's within 30 days of purchasing the home. The time is stated in the zoning regulations. But I fear that the enforcement of that regulation would be very difficult, to the point where someone could buy this property and turn it into a 2-income home, two rentals. And lastly, in your meeting on April 7th, there was an agenda item to discuss possible revisions to the zoning regulations as they pertain to the accessory dwelling units. The public hearing for those proposed revisions is set for June 2nd of this year. And I believe it's in the best interest of the residents to understand the content and context of any of those revisions that could be included in the possible revision of the regulations. So regretfully, I'm here to tell you that I'm opposed to this application, and I hope you consider my comments along with all those others, and certainly mean no disrespect to the Schoenhardts. We're trying to preserve our property values and the character of the neighborhood.
Thank you. Next.
My name is Mary Beth Peterson. I'm not an abutting property owner. I reside at 19 Pasture Lane, and I'm not for or opposed to this, but I am very concerned about the process. A little confused because the work has already begun, and I thought that it wasn't to begin until after this was all approved, so I just have a little confusion on that. I did have my property appraised very recently, and I had a conversation with my appraiser this morning, and the appraiser indicated that whenever you have a circumstance like this, it does have an impact on the values of properties in neighborhoods generally. I understand that according to the technical language, this is not a multifamily dwelling. However, when you're renting property to a third party, it's a rose by another name. The considerations that the commission has to take are the need for the proposed location. And I would just like to impress that there is a large difference between a need and a want. And we all would like to stay in our homes until we die. But this is not a mother-in-law suite. And it does change the character of the neighborhood. It does increase the population. If it's done well, that's fine. But I think that it's important to consider every aspect of this and not to rubber stamp it. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Andrew Sharp. I reside at 81 Hedgehog Lane in West Simsbury, so not on Pasture Lane, not abutting, a few blocks away. 81 Hedgehog Lane. I'm familiar with what's been proposed, excuse me, for this work. And I was actually surprised to hear that anyone would be concerned about property values, because I think whatever aesthetic change is made is going to be de minimis. And knowing Rick Schoenhardt, it will be expertly done. But beyond that, we have an increasingly aging population, and whatever can be done to let people stay in their home, I think is really, really important and should be valued and honored. And quality of life is, I think that's more than a want. I think that is a need. So I would encourage the approval of this project. Thank you.
Thank you. Oh, sorry.
My name is Ken Pignon. I'm at 57 West Ledge Road, which is P as in Peter, I-G-N-O-N-E. And I'm the corner house on Pasture and West Ledge. I'm pretty much, make it simple, I'm kind of opposed basically because I'm concerned about the future. As far as a multifamily dwelling. And I understand the laws on it, but I also understand that it's generally us that have to become the police force and report it and make sure that things get done. And I really don't have the time for it, and I'd just as soon keep the character of the neighborhood to single-family homes. So based on that and the fact that it is going to be a rental income, not a in-law apartment, so to speak, I would ask that the board not approve it. Thanks.
Excuse me? John Loomis, L-O-O-M-I-S. So I won't read that part. 500 Firetown Road, Simsbury. Mr. Chairman and members of the Zoning Commission, I speak in support of the Schoenhardt application for a special exception for one accessory dwelling unit on the property at 7 Pasture Lane, West Simsbury. As a former chairman of the Planning Commission during its creation and adoption of Simsbury's 2007 Plan of Conservation and Development, I observed that the requested special exception is consistent with and supported by the POCD's chapter on housing. Under Policy 4 of that chapter, the POCD recommends that a conversion of residences on a case-by-case basis through a permitting process be allowed to include one accessory apartment so long as one living unit remains owner-occupied. Article 7 of the zoning regulations, Section 9, states that, quote, you already know this, the purpose of this section is to implement the recommendations of the 2007 Plan of Conservation Development, and as it may be amended by providing and preserving housing for all the population, while at the same time preserving the appearance and character of the town's neighborhoods by permitting, by special exception, the creation of a single accessory dwelling unit incidental and subordinate to an existing single-family dwelling. End quote. It's my opinion that this application fulfills the Planning Commission's intent and that it appears also to satisfy Simsbury zoning regulations under Article 7. Thank you. And I have copies of this I'd like to leave with the clerk and with each of you. Hiram.
Thank you. Anyone else wish to speak?
Hello, my name is Bob Durbois. D as in David, U-R-B-O-I-S. My wife and I have been a resident of in town at 9 August Road for 37 years. There is a property 2 houses away from us that did a similar but more extensive modification to the home to accommodate a second family. And we've been living in the neighborhood near that for half a dozen years now. And I see 0 negative effects. I am totally in support of the applicant's request. I should think that if the values in our properties our neighboring properties were going down, we would see that reflected in our taxes. My taxes have not gone down, and I have heard no complaints from any neighbors. And it's a much more extensive improvement to that property than what the Schoenhardts are proposing. There are several properties that have upgraded in the same way throughout the town. And with all respect to the committee, and I don't have the knowledge that you have, but just as a common citizen here in town, I would think that to not approve it would clearly be an unfair prejudice against the applicant. And I don't think that should happen. The Schoenhardts have been in town for over 50 years, and Rick has had an architectural practice in town, so he's paid taxes to the town through that. Also, they pay taxes from their residential property. They've participated in town committees, been very active. They are, in other words, the kind of citizen that you want to have in your town. And I think anything that can accommodate keeping them here and not economically causing them to go elsewhere should be encouraged and approved. My friend Andrew here mentioned that he knows Rick and realizes that the improvements to the property will be done well. Well, I'm a contractor, and I've worked with Rick. I'm not here because of that relationship, but I do recognize something that Rick perhaps will not boast about, but he is a member of the College of Fellows of the American Institute of Architects, and that's a very, very select group. It's the highest recognition that the American Institute of Architects will give to any of their members. So Rick is not going to slap something together. Any improvements he makes to the property will be very, very well done. And that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Sir, if I might ask, do you have any interest in improving the property at all?
No, we're commercial.
Okay.
Commercial construction managers.
Thank you.
Hi, Chris Izard. I live at 72 Woodchuck Hill, one street up. Izard. I'm here in support of this project. A couple quick things, in addition to what the last speaker mentioned about Mr. Schoenhardt's ability to design a high-quality dwelling. I'm also a contractor, and just knowing Simsbury's zoning and Simsbury's building code, the state of Connecticut's building code, I'm sure that anything that gets built is going to be of quality and of substance, which to me would allay most of the fears as to the kind of building that might go up and how that might negatively affect property values. On a much more personal note, when my father was ill 20 years ago, and my parents moved to Simsbury in the early 1960s, due to his personal situation and circumstances, he was not able to find a place to live that was similar to what the Schoenhardts are proposing. And I was too young at that age to really be able to do much about it. This is the exact kind of thing that really would have made my life and his life a whole lot easier if somebody, it wouldn't even had to have been our place, if one of our neighbors had something like this where somebody in that situation could have stayed. It would have meant the world to me. And I was unable to do anything about it at the time. So in that sense, I couldn't support this anymore. Thank you.
Good evening. My name's Jerome Bertuglia. I reside at 12 Woodchuck Hill Road, Bertuglia. As I said, I reside at 12 Woodchuck Hill Road. My property abuts a couple of earlier folks who got up, the Rices and Mr. Pignon. I'm also a building professional, but I do not have a concern about any negative impact on the value of my property or the properties around me with what the Schoenhardts are intending to do. And I feel very secure about that.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Good evening. My name is Jim Crayson, spelled Creighton, and I live at 274 Stratton Brook Road in Simsbury. And I'm here to indicate that I am in support of the accessory dwelling proposed before the board. I've been a resident of Simsbury for 13 years now. What I love about Simsbury is the strong sense of community that's developed here years ago and still remains strong. Sounds like the Planning and Zoning Commission at the time when the regulations were approved to allow accessory apartment took careful steps to make sure that it would be done in the most proper way, especially making sure that the owner of the property remains the owner of the property. I lost my parents a few years ago, and the same thought came to my head that we did not, in the home that I grew up in, we did not have the option to bring in a care person that could live in a separate structure such as this. And it would have been a nice option, a very nice option. So those are my thoughts, just to indicate my support for the proposal. Thank you.
Anyone else? All right. Any other?
I got a quick question. One of the speakers had mentioned that construction's already started. Is that the fact?
Yes. Yes, it is. I have filed for a building permit, but the building permit has not been issued pending this decision. What has been constructed does not have any bearing on whether it's an accessory apartment or not. What I've done in terms of construction was to divide the stairway and to put the exterior door in, and the deck is under construction. I happen to do this because on this schedule because I was able to get the very skillful builder that built an addition for me a number of years ago. He was willing to come out of a retirement as long as he could start right away. So what is being constructed will be inspected by the building inspector. It will comply with all requirements. And should this application be denied, we wouldn't go. Obviously, we wouldn't go forward with the kitchen installation. Otherwise, it's appropriate, acceptable for single-family dwelling.
Okay. Appreciate everyone's participation. Hearing no questions specific to the presenter, with all due respect, I didn't hear anything that really required a rebuttal, Mr. Schoenhardt. So, all right.
With all due respect also, Mr. Schoenhardt, I think we've seen a trend of retroactive approvals, and what really gets me more than anything is starting construction before an approval's been made. That's just My personal opinion.
I take that reprimand. Accept that.
As the individual in town that has to evict these people when these things go south, most of the ones I'm dealing with are unapproved, and I want to compliment the applicant for at least coming for the approval.
Thank you, Ned. I feel compelled to respond, Derek, only because I think the point that Mr. Schoenhardt made is correct, that his adding a door to the property is not in violation of what any homeowner
Sure, would
could
he
do.
have done it if the approval wasn't granted? Probably not.
It's not the same as somebody who's been using that home as a rental
Well, I
property
agree.
without
That's one of the
approval.
things that makes me very comfortable is the fact that Mr. Schoenhardt will reside at the property.
Okay. So I'm looking for a motion to close the public hearing.
Move we close public hearing?
Seconded by Mr. Ryan. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All right. I would say that we would move then to item 5 on our agenda, which is action on any agenda item. And I guess I would like to amend that, the order of that, to go ahead and have a conversation regarding Mr. Schoenhardt's application and try to come to resolution on that. I'd like to make just a few points about our accessory dwelling regulations and I believe Mr. Rice's comments about pending changes. This has been a topic of which we have had quite a bit of discussion over the years that I've been on the zoning commission, the handful of years I've been on here. And it is one that is not easily resolved, and we are not anticipating major changes to the zoning regulations relative to the substance of the conversation tonight. So if you were suggesting that perhaps we should stop making decisions about these until we have that massive change, I think the changes that are in the works are on the margin rather than to the substance. It is difficult what we have to deal with because the fundamental difference between a house that has a rec room with an additional bedroom put into the basement that someone remodels is not functionally different than a house that has meets all the requirements for the accessory dwelling, which includes a separate entrance and a kitchen. Those are the two fundamental differences. And I think the other thing we struggle with is what used to be called an in-law apartment. There were several references to that today, where it was owner-occupied with a family member living there, and there's always a lot more sympathy for that kind of situation than someone who forthrightly says that they're going to rent it to someone for a reason like that. But it's very hard to draw that distinction. What is rent? What is taken in compensation for the use of a space once divided? And these are the kinds of things that we've struggled with, whether we could perhaps make the change that would draw a bright line between taking compensation for the space or not. We have not gone there. I think the fundamental protections in the regulations as they exist really revolve around owner-occupied and the strong incentive there is for the owner to live in the building and deal with the tenant if it is not a family member, or worse if it is. Sometimes those can be equally. But Mr. Schoenhardt has already explained, as his son did, that the house was occupied by the elder Schoenhardts and their family for a period of time that didn't change the character of the neighborhood by having his family live there. So these are the things that we as zoning commissioners have to deal with when we look at these kind of specifics. Mr. Rice was also correct that this is not a right that everyone who wants to do this has. It is a special permit given by exception. But we do have extensive requirements as to what does comply with our regulations. And generally speaking, if the property does fit those, we would be more inclined to accept it than not. So that's my speech. Be glad to hear other commissioners
Thought about
respond.
that one, Rob.
Huh?
Said you put some thought into that one.
I have some comments as well.
Yeah.
I have concerns. First of all, I want to thank Mr. Schoenhardt for your very forthright disclosures. I appreciate that you came forward to explain that you'll be taking rental income for the property. I see a significant distinction between a special exception granted to accommodate current family situations and needs that might include an in-law apartment or something for caregivers, which I believe was the genesis of this special exception and the intended use of it. I see a different situation in a rental unit and what then becomes a multifamily situation. I see that's very different from someone who's in a house and needs help and support from other family members who want to have their own entrance and their own kitchen, or a caregiver who needs to live with you and to help you be able to live there. I think I have to look to the expectations of the neighbors, those people who are living around you, and in Simsbury who bought their houses expecting to live in a single-family street or neighborhood. And I think that I also understand that there are a lot of people in Simsbury who may be coming in a situation similar to yours, sir, and might want the benefit of income from renting out the property. But I do think that thwarts the expectations of your neighbors who purchased properties that they expected to be in a neighborhood full of similar properties, which is how our zoning has acted in the past, of single-family units. So I have concerns, and depending upon other comments received tonight, I'll be voting against it.
As probably the only guy that was on the commission when this was passed the first time, I pretty much, as I remember it, it was pretty much the way Will Fiske just mentioned it. I don't recall that the thought of renting these out to people was on the minds of the commissioners when it happened. But then I remember very little about what happened.
Full disclosure. All right, so I would be looking for a motion in favor of or against,
I will
depending.
move that we accept the application 14-17 of Richard Schoenhardt for special exception.
I'll second the motion.
Could we just ask for clarification by accept? You're recommending approval?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, somebody clear.
ACCEPT.
I got it. Did all the commissioners receive the staff report?
So the motion's been moved and seconded. All in favor, say aye. Voting members?
Aye.
3. Opposed?
Opposed.
3. So the tie vote is a failure to approve, correct, Hiram? Correct. So the application's denied. Thank you. All right, let's move on to, the next is application 13-43 of Terry Ann Hahn, LADA PC Land Planners Agent. Town of Simsbury owner, for a site plan amendment for Simsbury Veterans Memorial on the property located at 725 Hop Meadow Street.
The other thing you got.
Map G10, Block 203, Lot 049, Zone SC1. Is the applicant here, or in town here?
She's out in the hall.
That's all right.
That was gonna be the first thing.
Yeah.
Do you guys have any paperwork on this?
We do.
Or anything?
We have the drawings and
Okay.
the
Just wanted to be sure, because I have extra copies in case you have.
sketch.
Okay.
If you have extra copies, I'd like to, I did see it, but I wouldn't mind being able to look at it as you speak.
You want to see it in living color?
I'll take one too, Terry.
Anyone else?
Yeah, I'll take one. Thanks.
Anything else?
Okay, thanks.
Look at those people that stand there all the time.
Thank you, yeah.
Okay.
Sorry.
No problem. My name is Terry Ann Hahn, principal of LADA PC Land Planners. We're the designers for the project. We've not been in front of this board for quite some time, if ever during this process, but we've been in front of a number of boards. So let me start sort of at the beginning. So I'm not sure what people know, what they don't know. We are looking to create a new Veterans Memorial to be located on Hop Meadow Street. It is a combined group of American Legion and VFW who are putting this together. There are a number of small veterans stones in various different locations in Simsbury, and those will stay in place, but this one will be particularly intended for a long-term sort of gathering spot on Hop Meadow Street that will be focused on those residents of Simsbury who died during their service. And it's a little over 100 names, and it goes all the way from the Revolutionary War to current. We have looked at a number of different locations in Simsbury. We've looked at a number of different designs. We've been in front of library boards, the Selectmen, Conservation Commission, Design Review, and this is our current location and design. We are proposing to install the memorial at the driveway for the library, which is known as Eaglewood Lane. When you come in here, the entrance to Drake Hill Mall is behind you. This is the library up at the top of here. The parking continues on. There's some parking over in this area, and then it turns around the back side of the library. Right now, this is flat, and then it drops down into an area where there's ultimately a stream over in the middle of this section, goes to parking lots, Boy Scout Hall. Okay. The land is on property owned by the town of Simsbury, and is ultimately one of the discussions that have come up with is that this design is intended to sort of integrate with other things that may occur sometime in the future. It doesn't have, it's a standalone element on Hop Meadow Street, which is what the veterans really wanted, but it does not have any negative impacts in any fashion in the event that something else occurs in this general area. The memorial itself is a flat platform that this will be filled in this area here, sloped down, and it comes off of Hop Meadow Street relatively flat. There are 4 columns, which is what you see on your picture here, which have different elements. The first one takes into account, there's a series of images of soldiers through time, so that we have some faces and the reminder that this is not just about names, but also about people. There are 2 center columns that will have the actual names inscribed. These are intended to be whitish granite, so that it's, and the black elements is actually set inside the column itself. We've been working with the stone guys up in Vermont, so it's all made in America. The 4th element is quotation to explain what it is that we're doing, and they're able to carve an American flag draped over the top, which is kind of cool technology that they have now with their lasers. The memorial is designed to be, you can walk around the backside, and on the backside there are actually engraved elements representing the various different elements of democracy, the Declaration of Independence, the Constitution, etc. on the backs. You'll be able to walk around, like I said, the backside, and should anything actually occur in this area here, you'll be able to integrate the pillars will be noticeable from there. We will have small lights on all 4 sides of the memorial in the pavement that come up. So, and we will have a light on the flagpole, which is required, but there will be no other lighting associated with this. It'll just be the columns that you'll see in the evenings. There's a timeline which is engraved in the black granite to match the various different, the granite that's inside those columns. Down at the pavement section that just talks about the various different timelines for the wars, American Revolution, etc., that is represented on the column. We have 6 benches proposed, which is one for each of the various different services, Army, Navy, Air Force, Marines, Coast Guard, and Merchant Marine. So that's what the 6 columns are there for. The proposal is to take the brick, which is part of the streetscape vocabulary, include that in as bands as it comes into the memorial, but these areas here will be pavers that will actually be used to be inscribed with veterans' names as part of our fundraising efforts. So this area here, these will be pavers this way. Flagpole, as you can see, we're proposing planting more of a defined hedges on the front. We're looking at PJM rhododendrons in the back, and the Conservation Commission asked us if we would consider putting some Mount Laurel as well. Ultimately, if something ever happens here that might have a reflection, if anyone's ever been to Middleton Place down in South Carolina, the reflection of the rhododendrons on water is quite lovely. So, but that is not part of the application. It just happens to be a anticipated side effect. So, I think that pretty much covers everything. We've been in front of design review, we've been in front of Conservation Commission, and now we're here.
And we need to act on this because this is a site plan for land owned by the town of Simsbury. Yeah, I looked at the site today, and the question of leveling it out and filling it is really, so will there be a retaining wall along the back?
No. Well, we had one at one point in one of our previous designs, but that was determined to be undesirable. It will be flat. It actually tilts away slightly, and then it will be a 3-on-1 slope down, and that's why we need a conservation approval. But ultimately, if anything happens here, you can there's still the ability to run a pathway along the lower bottom if the town ever chooses to continue with that.
Nice.
What do you plan to do about future wars?
There are notes, and the first time I was asked this question was a memorial that I designed for Granby, and at that time I was 18 and I was appalled. I have learned my lesson since then, and yes, there are additional spaces available on these columns that will actually be on more than one side. That black plant panel for the potential addition for names for the future, regrettably.
What about the timeline?
The timeline will also be slightly short. It'll go about 3/4 of the way and then continue on. But it's not going to be, it's not going to pace out equally. So it's not going to have 300 years in a nice even progression. It'll be constricted. So when that happens, it won't look funny.
Just point of clarification, there's no coloring on the flag draping?
No, it's actually...
It'll just be stone, right?
What they do is when they leave some of it smooth and some of it rough, it makes those different stripes.
Gotcha.
And they also have a polish that they put on it. It's not red, white, and blue. It's simply different shades of stone.
Gotcha. Very nice. Yep. And who will maintain?
The town will ultimately take over.
Yep.
And that's part of the reason why it's relatively clean and simple. These hedges out here can actually be clipped if the town is inclined to do that. These will simply be let natural and take over the slope.
Okay, thank you.
Great. So I think we can act on this if someone wants to make a motion.
Make a motion to approve application, I don't know what it is. The application, 1343. Okay.
Right.
I'll second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
That's
None?
wonderful.
Great, thank you.
My uncle is one of the 100.
Sorry to do that.
World War II. That's great. I'll go back tribute.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
So the next item is the application number 14-01 of James V. Whitmore, owner, for a special exception pursuant to Article 7, Section C-9 of the Simsbury zoning regulations for an existing accessory dwelling unit on the property located at 3 Winwood Road. Public hearing was opened and closed on February 3rd, and we're back. So,
Questions at that time had to do with a tenant that was in the process of being removed from the property. The owner of the property indicated that that process was underway. Commission decided that evening, rather than trying to remove the kitchen or shut off electricity or anything else, that process would play out and then make a decision at that point. The application with regard to the technical aspects of the regulation, does in fact meet the regulation, and the tenant has in fact been removed from the site, evicted from the site. The rest of the property is as like presented in the application, remains essentially the same as it was then. So that's what it is.
I just asked the commissioners if you were not present at the February 3rd public hearing, that at least let us know that you weren't here to hear the public hearing part.
I was not here.
There was, I mean, we do have the minutes. There was a fair amount of public commentary on this particular project. Some of the people here that are left were at that meeting as well. So I guess I'd ask questions from the commissioners if we recall what the conversation was. There was concern about parking, about although we did clarify that the addition of a gravel parking place was not what was intended by the change in the parking. That was more about adding a driveway. There was concern about certain pets in the neighborhood that were expressed as a result of the tenant who has now left. As I recall, this is a basement dwelling, accessory dwelling.
That's correct, Mr. Chairman.
So the question before is the application, so I would need a motion to approve.
I move we deny the application.
Second. I'm sorry, what?
I move we deny the application.
I'd like to ask you to make it a positive motion so that a tie does not succeed.
So, good point.
So you will not make the motion?
Will not make the motion.
I will not second.
I would
Thank you for
move
that.
to accept the application, whatever the number is, for 4 Winwood Place,
1401.
1401.
So I will second the motion. Any further discussion?
But just to clarify, this one is a retroactive approval, right?
Yes, it is.
This was never approved as one, unlike the previous
It's being
application.
used prior to. Is that correct? I have not misspoken.
But it seems to me that it's a case where we had a significant amount of neighborhood opposition.
Strong.
And in view of our previous action, I think I would be opposed to approving it.
You moved it, though.
It's okay.
All right.
Tie doesn't
Someone had to
win.
move.
I concur. I think that some of the things that were discussed as concerns, this kind of a situation were borne out by the comments from the neighbors when we had the discussion in February.
So I'll ask for the vote then, since it was moved and seconded. All in favor, say aye. All opposed, say nay.
Nay.
So the application is denied. All right, thank you. So the next item is the formal action on the resolution for the 2 Pride gas convenience store and signage. Just to be clear, we did actually vote on these last time, and we did ask Hiram to put together approval letters, which I hope we've had a chance to look at. Hiram did raise with the builder and developer the question of refacing the building on the north property to face the street, and I guess after consultation, they've decided that that's not really practical for them, and instead they've offered to put windows on the side of the building that will face Hot Meadow Street.
Correct.
I always presumed, I shouldn't presume, but that there was a reason why they had the building facing the other way when, on the lot. I don't think it's quite as deep as the other lot. Is
Yeah,
that correct?
I think the building is pretty close to square, but I think it's 42 by 46, if I recall correctly. But I think that the way the entrance to the building is laid on the lot is that the entrance to that would actually be primarily from the south side of the building where the pumps are and so on.
I think they want the people inside to be able to see the pumps.
I thought that was the issue too, Ned, was that, yeah, they want the building to face the delivery of the gas,
Yeah.
so.
Yeah, that's certainly a possibility as well, and I think that.
As wonderful as the company is, they have more problems than you can think of with the pumps.
Well, so I think we have to defer to their contractor and design. I don't find it overly offensive that the side of the building faces, and I think his offer to put the windows is a reasonable solution.
No, we didn't approve it with that change.
No.
Okay.
No, we approved it as submitted.
As they submitted it?
Yeah.
Okay.
There was a discussion at design review about the fact that the front of the building is brick and the siding is white vinyl. But there was never, they voted to recommend to us approval of that combination as being standard. We made the one change about the louvered fence around the, and Hiram would have solved that problem by turning the building, so it would have been facing the back, the trail, but that didn't happen. So.
Couldn't quite swing it, yeah.
So I guess I'm fine confirming our original approval. We will accept their offer to put the windows in, so let's make that a condition, I guess.
They're gonna keep the building the way it is, right?
The way it was
originally.
Just change the outside.
You saw it last time. The other, of course, the other issue is the lighting on the sign. That's, I pointed that out, Ted. Well, staff originally was told that they had a pre-vested right in the internally lit sign that's on the property. The reality is that the sign that's there now, while it's internally lit, is conventional lighting. That sign is no longer going to be there. It's going to be removed to a different location, and the interior of the sign is not going to be conventionally lit. It's going to be LED with changing gas prices. I did talk to the town attorney about that, and I said, I asked him whether the pre-existing non-conforming use would continue to remain when the sign was being changed that much in that location. In fact, it's a new sign. He did not think it was going to continue to maintain its pre-existing status. So, two things. There were some lights in the fascia of the canopy over the pumps, which I think we put that in the motion. But the LED signs and the changeable signs are an issue that we need to consider. It's not just this one application or these two Pride stations. I suspect that if it gets approved that way, that we will have a series of them very shortly. Now, if the commission's okay with that, that's fine, but our regulations are pretty clear as to no internally lit signs.
There are none that are approved now that are similar?
Especially not ones that have not gone through. Remember the restaurant over on the town line?
Mm-hmm.
That was because it was so far from the street.
Burger that's, yeah.
I think that's the only one that I recall.
Yeah, but that's not an LED light, is it?
No, it wasn't. It was just simply internally
That came
lit.
up in the meeting, though.
Yeah.
Right.
The only other LED lighting we've had has been in the parking lot, Drake Hill, for example.
Yeah.
We talked about that. But
Those are a different kind of LED light, though. That's a bulb.
That's correct.
That's a bulb that gives an equivalent to incandescent light. This is like a traffic light with
Multiple.
right?
Yes, it is,
has
yeah.
lots of little tiny lights that says $4.85 a gallon for gas, right? That's
They
Like a
can
scoreboard.
change it to 86
Yeah.
just by pressing a
Yeah.
button.
Right.
It's easy for them.
But I think if we approve it for them, then we will have, every gas station will want one of these instantly.
And
So,
every package store.
And every,
yeah, so we should say no.
Yeah, I think it's, I'm frankly, and I want to be real clear that I'm certainly not anti-business on this matter. I just think that's something that will significantly change the way signs look in town. No question.
Maybe we could look at alternatives. Or I'm sure he'll bring some in for us to look at, but I guess I just don't know the breadth of availability of signage for,
Yeah, so if he was willing to keep the sign, or replace the sign he has with a similar internally lit fluorescent or incandescent, whatever it is, we would probably be compelled to let him have that because of the existing permit.
Only if you kept the same sign though, correct?
In the same
If he
location.
replaces that sign, my desire would be not to have any internally lit signs consistent with our regulations.
Right.
So I don't know whether legally they'd be entitled to keep the same old sign. But if that old sign is gone, I would be inclined to not approve any internally lit sign.
If instead it said, instead of Valero, it said Pride, we have no issue with that. We did the same thing on West Street.
I mean, if it was internally lit,
It's currently internally lit.
I have an issue with any internally lit sign. The only way, yeah, so if it's changed at all, I would say they should not be allowed to have any internally lit sign.
There is a precedent. Various package stores that have internally lit signs. Some of them are for beers that weren't around when the original internally lit sign went in. So when they change beers, they change the signs. And we've let them ride for decades.
Well, I think we have grounds here to say that unless he's going to use the same sign, that he does not have the right to use.
What is the current sign? Can someone remind me how the current sign is set up and how the prices are shown?
I don't think the prices are on it.
Oh, there are, okay.
No, I think it just says Valero,
Yeah, right,
and it's kind of just a.
Yep.
The north end one definitely, no, they both have prices on.
Yeah.
They
The
have to-
plastic changing
But
ones.
they'd be changed manually, correct.
LED
I mean,
sign.
there's a question there of the look of those as well. I mean, you get one where the sevens, you get one with the numbers crooked, or, you got people out there cheating.
I've seen that.
Oh, yeah, the tape number, yeah. But we have to look at some other options.
So maybe asking the applicant to come back with some alternatives to express to the commission what the possibilities would be something you want to do.
I think it just looks cheap.
He probably should bring the sign back to the DRB and then to us for approval.
Yeah.
That'll make him happy.
Well, I think they have plenty to do before they actually get going with regard to modifications to the building and so on, so.
Another one that started digging before they had the permit, but.
Yeah,
just for the record.
it's the trend.
Well, does anybody else have anything? It's not a good night for the zoning commission.
That's what my car is still.
Huh? Yeah. All right.
So the motion as drafted with those changes that we talked about?
Yes.
Okay.
Right. Okay, status of the following, the Hartford Code.
Just before that, if I could, Mr. Chairman, it was mentioned earlier this evening that the commission has set the public hearing for changes to the accessory apartment regulation, and you all have that. That was a copy that was dated February 24th, and I've not heard anybody say they wanted any changes to that. I've got to notice it tomorrow, unless...
I just have a question. I don't know if it's appropriate here or another part, but I mean, is there a way we can address, what happens if an applicant comes in retroactively and something already exists? Is there anything that we could consider in some way? I mean, without sounding like we're punishing them, but just some action, because we just keep seeing. We just keep seeing more and more. Oops, it's an oops, and
There's two things, I think, there. One is that an after-the-fact permit, according to our fee structure, is a triple fee.
Okay.
And that's, whenever we get one of those, it's a triple fee. The one Winwood was a triple fee.
Okay.
The other sort of side of this is that some people have suggested that maybe what we ought to do in order to find out where all these things are is offer a short amnesty period and get them all in and get it straightened out. And if it don't come in during that period,
Right.
then the commission's going to have a very different, posture with regard to those. And that's a possibility. But that would be something where we'd have to actually pass a regulation to put that amnesty period in place.
Okay.
But that's the question.
I mean, I'd go so far as saying we don't vote on anything until the open period, or at least until, granted, the changes here aren't significant, but leave it to the open period and let everybody come in at once.
Okay, so to be clear, we're talking about two different things right
Right.
now. So you're talking about the changes. Hiram was talking about the Hartford code.
Oh,
So, just to be clear. Let's finish on the Hartford code and then we can talk about this. So the Hartford code, the hearing date is set for,
We actually don't have a hearing date for the Hartford Code. We finished that about 3 weeks ago.
Okay.
The Hartford Land Use Code, Hartford Property Land Use Code. We're waiting to hear back from the Hartford that it's acceptable to them,
oh, that's right, okay.
and so that's what we're waiting for now. I've asked them a couple times, I really don't want to ask them anymore. They say they're looking at it, so we're just kind of waiting for them to get back
Do
to
they
us.
have a buyer?
That'd be nice.
All right,
So we don't know, but that's basically where that is right now, Mr. Chairman.
all right.
So that's ready to.
All right, so now let's take Derek's. So this is the proposed changes for the accessory apartment.
Again, I don't know if this is the appropriate place for it, because there may be other applications that come in that are retroactive.
But let me ask this question, in line with this, back to that Wynwood Road property. It's done, it's been done, we just denied it. Who's gonna police that?
Well, now,
They're gonna keep.
Well,
because we
there's
know-
nobody living there, right? You got that friendly neighbor.
They're not gonna say, oh, they denied it, so we're not gonna.
But there's nobody living there now, so.
Will be though, right?
So, no, what happens now is because it's clear that it's a violation, because it doesn't have a permit, then we would proceed to have it made converted.
To deny approval, the one thing that one of the people said, to deny approval on a prospective non-compliance is not really where we want to go. I mean, there are ways that, we don't have the enforcement necessary to shut all of them down.
Right.
Nor do we want to, but I think there are ways.
Yeah.
I think we have to look, as John Loomis pointed out, I think we need to look back at what the planning commission did and what they said and why they said it and how we approach that. And there's certainly a need for some of these things in certain places. Whether the commission is particularly sympathetic to ones that have already been started or whatever, that's a different matter. So.
We'll also point out to you that there are lots of people renting rooms in Simsbury.
Oh, sure.
I don't know.
That aren't accessory apartments.
No, it's just a sign of the times or whatever it is. We have regulations that say no rooming houses. But.
Well, this was a
Maybe
broader
don't
discussion we
complain.
had, which is what is a family member, if you want to start there. I mean, that, so it would be all right if the family member pays rent or contributes to the house, that's where the gray areas all start. That's what makes it so difficult. All right.
Can I make a comment, Mr. Chairman?
Yeah.
Just on the topic of these generally, on the topic of the changes to be considered, if you look closely at the regulation, section 7, or article 7, the discretion that's in the hands of the zoning commission on most of these is limited to 2 items. The first 2 items in the standards, and it's need and character, existing and future character of the neighborhood. Usually you're not going to have location of the buildings because it's something within a building.
Right.
Or traffic circulation, water and sewage is already done. And then lighting and loading.
I think safety was one of them too, that I would add.
It's not here.
Not really in there.
It's here.
But it should.
It's in the new regulation.
Yeah. So.
But you're right, those are the
There's only
standards.
2 things. Everything else is a checklist for the applicant to come either prepared or not, and Hiram's team tells you whether the checklist is done.
Right.
There's only 2 things in your hands.
Well, it's also highly, subjective, as to what it fits the character.
Well, I'm saying give yourself some more tools to work with if you're gonna open it up to look at changes in it.
Yeah.
Put some objective criteria in the list.
Especially if we went to an amnesty type program, I think we need to.
Well, it's not an amnesty.
I'll tell you that the first one that was done on East Weetard Street. And the guy built a separate building next to his existing building and put his father-in-law in there.
Yeah, put a little connector across.
No.
Is that the one?
No connector. And we're saying, that's not what we intended when we did it. And the hireman at the time said, well, that's what regulation says it is, so. Done deal.
Part of the problem is that what happened when communities started calling them in-law apartments is that attorneys and with regard to the Fair Housing Act got involved and said, from a land use standpoint, it doesn't really matter whether those people are related to you or not, but they're people and they have cars and so on. So the impacts, that is the standards that you need to hold them to, really don't have anything to do with relationships. Clearly, you can require that the owner live in one of the units, the small one or the large one, no question about that. But a lot of fair housing people got involved in whether it can continue to be legitimately an in-law apartment or not. That's how that came to be, and that wasn't that long ago.
So to that point, Mr. Schoenhardt, if we could put a stipulation that he would have to reside at the property as long as that, in other words, there was almost like a sunset on it?
Yeah.
Okay.
But if he sold it to someone else, they would have to, and they wanted to use it as a rental apartment.
They would have to own or
They would have to live there also.
Right.
Okay.
It's the owner, it has to be.
Exception goes with
The owner has to be in one of these.
It does go with the property.
Yes.
Okay.
And the new reg, and we talk about that, we talk about, a new owner, any new owner has to come in within 30 days and so on. So yeah.
All right. Big Y?
Big Y, actually have the plans on my desk. I've reviewed those.
What?
And those are ready to move to the building department very shortly. Gave
For
me
a
the
supermarket?
Big Y supermarket, yeah.
Remember that?
So long ago, I don't remember.
I'm gonna go stick a shovel in the ground up there.
So suppose, now, all I can tell you is that, the permit is very close, ready to issue. When they actually still start construction after that,
Right.
still don't know.
Yeah, right.
So they're getting close to not being ready now for the Christmas season.
They will not be ready this year, no question. Yeah.
That's a shame.
All right. Anything else for the good of the order?
Move we adjourn.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye.